Hey guys, tonight we drift way back to the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates, where the air hums softly with the sound of clay being pressed into tablet molds, and somewhere, probably within a cluttered corner of a mud brick kitchen, a pot of soap is quietly bubbling over a small flame. You're about to hear the story of ancient Mesopotamian soap making. Yes, soap. The kind you lather up with after a long day of, say, surviving cuneiform scribes and ankle-deep mud. And here's the twist: you probably won't survive this story without feeling at least slightly cleaner by the end. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're tuning in from, and what time it is right now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across the dusty streets, of your sandals scraping against baked clay. The sun's just dipped behind the ziggurat, leaving you in that calm, golden moment when shadows stretch long, but the air hasn't cooled yet. Inside one of the homes, someone is crouched by a fire, stirring what looks like soup, but smells suspiciously sharp, like burnt herbs and ash. This isn't dinner, it's soap. Or, well, the 2300 BCE version of it. The earliest known written soap recipes came from ancient Sumerians, part of the broader Mesopotamian world. They carved their instructions into clay tablets using styluses made from reeds. That's right. Your modern shower routine actually has roots in squishy reeds scratching symbols onto wet clay. Historians still argue whether these recipes were meant strictly for hygiene or for washing textiles. Some believe ancient soap was considered too harsh for human skin, more suited for wool robes than elbows. But the ingredients, they're not so different from the basics of soap today. Fat probably from sheep or goats combined with ash or alkaline salts. You're essentially boiling animal fat with plant ashes until it creates a gritty, grayish goop. Delicious the smell. Well, let's just say nobody in Mesopotamia was wandering around sniffing artisan lavender bars wrapped in twine. The funny part is, these soaps weren't always a private bathroom affair. Public baths weren't yet a thing. In fact, you might imagine a world where your neighbor is making soap right next to where they bake flatbreads, using the same clay oven. Hygienic? Maybe not. Efficient? Absolutely. Mesopotamian scribes recorded recipes in cuneiform, one of the first writing systems in history. These tablets weren't small. Either they were about the size of a large smartphone but heavier, and if you dropped one on your foot, you'd definitely notice. Some of the oldest tablets containing soap recipes were unearthed in Nippur, an ancient city that, according to scholars, was a spiritual hub, not exactly a soap-making factory. So there's still debate about whether these instructions were practical household guides or something more ceremonial. Maybe it was both. After all, in a world where spirits, gods, and clay ovens mixed freely, soap wasn't just soap, it could be part of a ritual. One quirky tidbit: some historians think the Mesopotamians discovered soap entirely by accident. Picture this: someone cooking fatty meat over an open flame, the drippings fall into ash. Rainwater pours into the mix and suddenly, voila, accidental, lie, soap. Did they rejoice? Probably not immediately. More likely, someone just poked at the weird sludge with a stick and went, huh. And let's not forget, Mesopotamian kitchens were multi-purpose spaces. There was no separation between where you made food, prepared medicinal balms, or boiled down fat for cleaning products. You'd likely find yourself crouched beside jars of barley beer, clay pots of dates, and right there in the corner a pot of greasy soap, sludge quietly solidifying. But here's the truly mesmerizing part. These early soaps weren't always made for scrubbing off garden dirt. Some scholars believe soap mixtures were used in religious purification rituals. In fact, one clay tablet describes cleansing ceremonies involving both soap and sacred incantations. So, you'd wash your hands, but you'd also recite a prayer. Maybe something like, "Oh great, Enki, cleanse this mortal grime." because you know spiritual dirt is apparently stickier. And remember, this is a world without mass production. Every batch of soap was small batch, artisanal, and probably a little lumpy. No one was worried about branding, but if they had been, you can imagine the labels: sheep fat and ash delight now, with extra clay residue. By now, the air around you is cooling. The evening wind picks up from the riverbanks, carrying soft ripples of conversation from neighboring courtyards. Somewhere, a scribe is still etching cuneiform lines onto damp clay, trying not to smear. The symbols. You lean in closer to the flickering hearth, where the soap pot bubbles quietly, a small, ordinary act in the vastness of ancient Mesopotamian life. You stay near the fire as the night deepens, the stars pricking holes in the dark sky above Mesopotamia. In the background, a donkey shifts its weight lazily, while your mind lingers on that pot of early soap. You might be wondering, what did people actually do with these strange, crumbly soap bricks once they cooled? Well, for one, they didn't lather up like you do in a modern shower commercial. Ancient Mesopotamian soap was more like a coarse paste or hardened chunk, almost like a cleaning clay. People would crumble bits into water or rub it directly onto fabrics to remove oils, dirt, and sweat. Personal hygiene in the ancient world was a whole different adventure, more about scraping, rubbing, and perfuming than actual soapy foam, and yet somehow they managed to stay relatively clean, at least by the standards of the time. There's a mainstream historical fact that historians often mention here. Some of the earliest mentions of soap-like substances appear in the cuneiform tablets from Babylon, dating back to around 2800 BCE. That's over 4,800 years ago. And while the Babylonians may not have had minty shampoo, they definitely understood the basics of combining fat with alkaline ash to create a cleansing agent. In fact, modern researchers have reconstructed these recipes and tried making the soap themselves. The reviews? Well, let's just say it wasn't exactly 5 stars on Amazon. Here's where things get a little quirky. Some Mesopotamian medical texts actually prescribed soap as a treatment not for dirt but for skin diseases. Ancient healers believed that combining soap with various herbs could soothe rashes or treat infections. Imagine walking into a Mesopotamian healing house and the doctor saying, "Try washing it off with this goat fat lotion ash paste. Side effects may include smelling like a burnt stew." And it wasn't just for humans. There's a fringe theory, one not accepted by all historians, that suggests soap was sometimes used in veterinary care, especially for cleaning animal wounds. Picture a weary farmer dabbing sticky soap onto the ankle of a limping goat, while muttering under his breath. Historians still argue whether these soap-based treatments were effective or just a form of hopeful experimentation. After all, when your other option is chanting at the moon and rubbing on powdered copper, a gritty soap paste starts to sound pretty advanced. Now, let's shift back to that Mesopotamian kitchen. You glance around the small room by firelight, noticing how organized the space is. Despite the chaos of daily life, there's a spot for reed baskets, a corner for barley and lentils, and shelves lined with clay pots. One of those pots holds soap chunks tucked away like precious commodities. They're not fancy, but they're essential, just like bread or beer. It's important to remember that Mesopotamian daily life revolved around cycles: planting, harvesting, baking, washing. Soap making, though tedious, fit neatly into this rhythm. Women often handled the process, turning domestic chores into miniature industries. In larger cities like Uruk or Babylon, some families probably sold soap at the market alongside woven textiles and pottery. It's kind of charming to imagine an ancient soap vendor standing at a stall, calling out 2 chunks for a shekel, comes with free ash smudges. But there's still mystery in these recipes. Some clay tablets refer to ingredients we no longer fully understand. For example, there's mention of something called cassia oil, a fragrant plant extract that might have made certain soaps smell spicy or sweet. Or it could have been a misinterpretation of a different herb entirely. Scholars debate whether these fragrant soaps were used for regular cleaning or saved for religious ceremonies, because nothing says divine offering like a nicely scrubbed altar. The idea of cleanliness in Mesopotamia wasn't purely physical. Being clean was tied to religious purity. Before approaching a temple or making a sacrifice, people often washed their hands with special mixtures of soap and water. Some texts even describe rituals where priests would cleanse their bodies in rivers at dawn, scrubbing away both literal and metaphorical grime. You can imagine standing waist-deep in the Tigris, shivering in the morning mist, while rubbing lardondash paste onto your arms and chanting softly. Of course, there were no plastic soap dishes or loofah. People stored their soap in clay jars or wrapped it in woven palm leaves. And if you were particularly thrifty, you might have recycled leftover cooking fat from last night's lamb stew. Waste not, want not. Fast forward to the present, and it's easy to forget that something as mundane as soap has roots so ancient. Yet the legacy is there, hidden beneath layers of modern packaging, glittery bath bombs, and foaming dispensers. Beneath it all, you're still participating in a tradition that began with ash, fat, and fire. As you lean back from the hearth in your mind, you can almost smell that strange mix of wood smoke, clay, and goat fat still lingering in the air. The soap has cooled now, hardened into rough cakes that glint faintly under the glow of an oil lamp. Somewhere, a Mesopotamian mother packs a few chunks away for later, stacking them beside a jar of honey and a bundle of date palms. Outside, the streets are quiet. The river murmurs softly in the distance, carrying the sounds of life along its current. You stay still for a moment, thinking about all the tiny, ordinary acts that connect you across time to people you'll never meet. Washing your hands, cleaning your clothes, making something useful from leftovers. And in this quiet space, the forgotten soap recipes of ancient Mesopotamia bubble gently in memory, no longer lost, just softly tucked into the back of your mind, where they can sit for a while like a warm bar of homemade soap resting by the sink. Now, as you settle deeper into your pillow, let the last bits of this ancient story melt away. Imagine the warm flicker of that Mesopotamian hearth fading slowly into darkness, the soft sounds of bubbling soap quieting to a gentle stillness. The night air cools as it rolls over the rooftops of ancient yore, brushing across clay walls and silent streets. Your breath slows, syncing with the easy rhythm of a river that has been flowing since long before soap, before writing, before even the idea of history itself. Let your thoughts drift gently, like reeds floating on the surface of the Euphrates. No need to hold on to any details now. They can dissolve like ash into water. The people of ancient Mesopotamia are long gone, but their ordinary routines there, cooking, cleaning, their careful crafting of simple things, whisper softly through time, reminding you that life is always a mix of the grand and the small. The temples crumble, but the soap remains. In memory, at least. Let your shoulders relax. Feel your body sink a little heavier into the mattress, as if you're part of the earth itself now, wrapped in soft layers of sleep and ancient stories. There's nothing more you need to do tonight. The pots are cleaned, the fires are out, and the soap is set to cool until morning. All that's left is stillness and sleep.